Welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 21st of June, 2018. We are doing a question and answer session. We had so many questions, we're going to break it into two. So if I don't get to yours in this session, I apologize. It's going to be in the next session, and that will be released shortly after this one. So we're going to do 2 weeks worth very quickly here. What this is a lesson for me. We obviously need to do the question and answer sessions more often. I kind of spaced them out a little bit more this time because the previous time we didn't have a whole lot of questions, but looks like we had some good questions come in, so we'll do them a little bit more often. Number one is from Hildo. Hi, Curtis. I have both the Zoom F8 and the FRC8 and the MixPre-10T. I also have a Zoom H4n and a bunch of H1, which I used for weddings in the past. I have a home recording studio for my own use. My question is this. I was keeping the F8 for music recording because of the FRC, but now that Sound Devices came out with the Musician plugin, I started to wonder if I should sell the F8 because although it's usable as an audio card or an audio interface, it isn't a built-in recording studio DAW like the Musician plugin. The hesitation is because of the FRC that I found useful. That's for those that aren't aware, that's the F control. It's a little control surface with linear faders. Makes it a lot easier to mix. Getting a controller for the Sound Devices system seems like an expensive option. What do you think? These days I mostly record promotional video with DSLR and corporate interview video. Well, what I think is that the MixPre-10T, as far as I'm aware, there is no option for a control surface. There aren't any compatible control surfaces for the MixPre-10T. So, at least as far as I'm aware, there is the Wingman app. It's not really for mixing. It's more for setting things up and starting and stopping recording and things of that nature. But it does not have a mixing. There are no faders. There's nothing like that. So it's not really made for that. So unfortunately, if you do want a control surface, I would stick with the Zoom F8. If, on the other hand, the DAW capabilities are more important to you than the 10T, or just keep them both. Try them both, and over time, figure out which one you prefer is probably the best thing to do. It's a tough decision, and people often ask me, Zoom F8, F8N, which just is going to start shipping here in the next little bit, versus the MixPre 6.3 10T. There's no clear answer, and I will say this: anyone that tells you that one is absolutely better than the others, I think is mistaken. I don't think that's true across the board. It may be better for certain types of recording scenarios, one over the other, but I don't think one is a clear winner. And I think you've probably had a good experience with both of them, is my guess. You own both of them. I agree that FRC8 or F control is really, really nice when you are doing mixing. The new Musician plugin, I have used it a tiny bit. I'm going actually up next week to spend some time with my brother to work on some projects. One of the things we're going to do is test out the new Musician plugin on the MixPre-10T. So you will see a video coming on that soon. I don't know if you have it yet, but we'll see. We'll see how it works for musicians. My brother does a lot more of that stuff than I do, so we're going to get a sense for that. So thanks for the question, Hildo. Next up is from Jay. Love your course and all your videos. I recently had a discussion with a local seasoned sound recordist that I work with about gear that I plan to purchase. Long story short, I'm picking up the Zoom F8N when it drops, and I'm picking up a Sound Devices MixPre 6 as well. We're seeing a theme here. When I talked with him, I was only considering the F8N, and he said that while the Zoom mixers have come a long way and are actually really great quality, that it would make it harder for me to get gigs with the gear because essentially people expect gear like Sound Devices mixers on the bigger production or higher paying gigs. Do you run into this issue ever with your F8 or anything like that? I know you have a Sound Devices as well, at least the MixPre. I think you have the 633 too. I do. We're in fact using the 633 to record this. Maybe that was just review. So I guess in a nutshell, my issue is do you ever run into issues getting gigs because of gear? And how would you recommend trying to combat that for real-world scenarios? Thanks for everything you do. Well, Jay, this is what I can say. My first kind of prosumer to pro-level mixer recorder was the Zoom F8. I used that for a lot of my work at my day job, which is doing... actually, I'm a product manager, a software product manager, and then I also do some video there. So mostly corporate video, mostly internal stuff. So for me, that was the first one. None of them, of course, could complain because I was bringing my own gear. So that was never an issue. And then by the time I started doing freelance location sound recording jobs, at that point I had the 633. So I don't really know. I don't think anyone's ever asked me, but the way I generally get the jobs is that it's usually word of mouth. So it's somebody I've worked with. A lot of them come with my friend Levi, who is a DP. A lot of times he'll get a gig and they'll ask if he knows any sound people and he'll say yes, and that's where I end up coming in. So for him, would he hire me if I only had an F8? And I say only, it's a great recorder. I think he probably still would. I think what people are generally looking for is the results. On the other hand, yeah, there are some people. Now, here's the thing that I would put into consideration. I don't know your situation. I don't know how many. It doesn't sound like you've done any location sound jobs yet. I assume because you're buying the F8 and when it comes out, and you're also going to buy a MixPre-6. I don't think there's anything when you're first starting out. You probably want to take the lower risk jobs, the ones that are a little bit more straightforward, where these are going to be more local jobs. They're not big productions generally. They're generally small productions. It's usually going to be a boom and maybe two lavalier mics. And a Zoom F8 is going to do a great job at that. And most people at that level are not going to care. They're going to want to know that you know your stuff. But are they going to care that you have a Zoom versus a Sound Devices? I don't know. So I don't know if I'm giving you a very good answer. What you could consider doing is, instead of buying a Zoom and a MixPre, maybe just save up for a Sound Devices 633 and be done. Now, with the price of those two, you're almost 2/3 of the way there to the price of a 633. I assume you also already have microphones, or you have the budget for microphones as well. But really, there are a lot of things that go into having a kit, and I don't know if you're planning on renting, if you're in a location where you can rent. Most of the sound rental houses are in the Southern California area, or Atlanta, or New York City. And so, yeah, you could rent for a while as well. So when you get a job, assuming they give you enough lead time, you could rent the gear that you need in addition. But anyway, there are some ideas. Does it matter? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I have a Sound Devices 633. I've never had a producer or a production company call me up out of the blue and say, hey, we're looking to hire a sound guy. What mixer do you use? I've never had that experience. But again, I'm working mostly on smaller jobs, so that may be part of the bias as well. If you do want to get the big jobs, then yeah, at some point you probably are going to need to look into it. Maybe at that point it matters. I know a lot of sound mixers on their websites will list their gear. So I guess for some people, the short answer, it matters for some people, some producers and some production companies, and it doesn't matter for a lot of others. So it depends on the size of the job and what type of job you're doing. I do mostly smaller location sound jobs, so I'm not doing the huge ones. The 633 and or the MixPre-10T have been plenty for me on every job that I've ever done. So in terms of the number of inputs and the outputs and so on and so forth. So anyway, hope that's helpful. Consider skipping those two and going straight to the 633, or the Zaxcom Max actually is another option, which nobody should blink at hiring you if you have and you know how to operate a Zaxcom Max and you know all your chops are up. You know what you're doing. So there's some thoughts on that, Jay. Hope that's helpful. And it turns out Jay has two more questions. Hope it's okay. I had a second question. With so many great production products for Timecode, like the NanoLockit, Tentacle Syncy, and the Timecode System Series, and most of them being around the same price, how, other than personal preference, would one go about discerning the differences between the systems to determine the best investment for our needs? Thanks again. I can tell you about those three. I own all three of those. NanoLockit, to me, there are two main reasons to buy the NanoLockit. Number one, it's probably the best built of those three that you list there. It is solid metal casing on those two, on the Timecode generators, the NanoLockits. It's super simple in terms of, they're just three buttons. There's no screen. And it also integrates wirelessly with the rest of the ambient sound wireless system. So if you're going to be working on a production where there are other ambient sound wireless products that you're going to need to integrate with, and NanoLockit is probably the one to go with. There are some things I don't love about that system. Number one, I always forget what the different buttons do, or kind of you have to use different button combinations to accomplish certain things, like to change the output level. If you're going to a DSLR versus a camera with a timecode input, you have to change that level. There's a little cheat sheet that comes with it, so you can always figure it out. To set things up initially, either you have to have the rest of the, some of the other control features or the higher end timecode generator gear from Ambient to change, for example, the frame rate on this, or you have to plug it in via USB to a computer to make that change. So that's a little bit more work. Tentacle Synchy I really like as well. The nice thing about Tentacle Synchy is that with an iPhone you can, and I think actually they have an Android version now as well. I'm not positive on that, but I think they do. You can connect via Bluetooth to each of the timecode generators and change all their settings right from your phone, which is nice. So you have a nice, beautiful screen. It's a very good app. Really like that. You can also check in throughout the course of the shoot wirelessly via your phone on the app to see the battery status and ensure that everything is still in sync. It will actually alert you if they're not in sync. So that's what I like about that system. Also, with that system, it comes with an app called the Tentacle Sync Studio for Mac that makes the post process very easy if you are shooting to DSLRs or other cameras that don't have a dedicated timecode input. If you're recording timecode to an audio track, in other words, their software does a really nice job of converting that to metadata or file timecode. So that's really helpful in those circumstances. Timecode systems is unique as well. What I like about them is that they each of the devices have an OLED screen on them, so you can change all of the settings on there. You can see exactly what you're doing. You don't have to connect via an app or anything, but you can if you need to. So that makes that really simple. Another unique thing about that system is that if you do buy one of the base stations, either the Wave or the Pulse, that will keep all of your other timecode generators in sync throughout the entire course of the shoot. So they will never drift out of sync because they're constantly, about every second, rejamming with each other. So that's a nice touch as well. What else can I tell you? Oh, there is also an app if you do want to connect to it, and there is also with a PC or a Mac, and soon with a PC, you can actually connect to your Sound Devices 600 series recorders and actually enter metadata and things like that through the app. So you can control all of your timecode generators, plus also enter metadata onto your Sound Devices. 633 or 688 or 664. I don't believe it works. In fact, I know it doesn't work with MixPre. It's only for the 600 series Sound Devices mixers. So those are the three main differences. Hopefully that helps you choose. For someone getting started out that's going to do more straightforward jobs, generally I would probably go with the Tentacle Synchy, but they're all good. They're all very good. You can't go wrong, I don't think, with any of them. But then it does actually, after that point, it does come down to personal preference from my point of view. Okay, next question. Do you have any recommendations on wired lavaliers in the event that I do any interview style audio where they will remain seated, but have some issues with interference for whatever reason? Do you have any good experience with wired lavs you can relate? Thanks again. Yes. The Audio Technica AT899 is quite good. It has an XLR. It's like a battery pack, but you can plug that into, directly into your mixer and record from there. So it sounds pretty good. I don't know a lot of others. That's one I own and I've used quite extensively. There are some others. I think Sony makes a few of them out there. The nice thing about the AT899 is it's a nice long cable, so if it is going to be a wired interview, you have plenty of cable there to run from. So hope that helps, Jay. Thanks for the questions. Next we have Mike. What are the Hirose battery options you use so far for your Sound Devices mixers, and which would you suggest for beginners from quality and price point of view? Well, the most straightforward way to power okay, so you're talking specifically about Hirose, or Hirose as they call it. So first of all, the most straightforward way to do that is to use a D-Tap or P-Tap. They're the same, as far as I can tell, D-Tap and P-Tap are the same thing. It's this kind of connector here to 4-pin, I believe it's male. Yeah, 4-pin male Hirose locking connector. So this will be plugged into the mixer, and this will plug into a battery. There are a variety of different types. This is a V-Lock or a V-mount style battery. This one's by a company called JuiceBox, I think. I'll put a link to that and to the cable. That's the most straightforward way. This just goes from the battery straight into the mixer, and with this you could easily get through an entire 12-hour production day. So that's one way to do it. These are a little on the big side, a little on the heavy side. So there are other ways. Let me grab another one to show you. There are NP1 style batteries, and there are also what are called high-Q batteries. And here's an example of a high-Q style battery. I'll see these on here. I actually went through this when I did my audio bag tour a couple of weeks ago, so I'll put a link for that video so you can see all the details. This one's a little bit more sophisticated. It goes along with a battery distribution system. So not only does it record or power your mixer, it also powers any wireless that you have in your bag. So that's kind of a different scenario. These are much smaller, as you can see. And in this particular case, I don't know if they're any lighter. This one is a 150 watt hour. This is a 98 watt hour. So this one actually has more capacity. Pretty close in weight, actually. The V-mount may be a little bit more heavy, but in any case, those are the couple of options that I would look at. Next question, I often record a type of music which is called bajans. In this type, the singing goes back and forth between the front singers and the audience. So recording the audience's audio is an important part of the recording. Now, like you often said, each room sounds different, and I do record in different rooms. As a beginner, my question is, what microphone would you choose to record the audience singing, and how do I find the best spot in the room to record audience without getting too much unpleasant hall sounds? Are there certain techniques to learn, or is it just walking around and listening via headphone with a shotgun microphone until you think you find a good spot? Okay, couple of things. Number one, first of all, microphone. And in fact, I would suggest you go back and watch our Sound for Video session where we talked with Mike Stranks about recording live music. I would not use a shotgun microphone for recording music in that scenario generally. I would instead use probably cardioid or omnidirectional, but probably cardioids, and I'd probably use two of them to get a stereo recording. He covers that in a lot of detail. You may want to go back and look at that. From my point of view, probably the best way to put the mics is to put them up near the stage and have them pointed back at the audience. And ideally, if you can, you'd probably want them up higher, aimed down at the audience so you get the whole audience. What else can I tell you? As far as getting too much unpleasant hall sounds, that's a done deal. You're getting the hall sound. That is just something you have to accept. And actually, usually when a whole, audience is singing like that, you want that full sound and the sound. There's no way to isolate the sound of an audience from the hall that they're in, really, that I can think of. So that's going to be just part of the experience in that case. So hopefully those things are helpful. Again, link for the Mike Stranks live recording session will be down below. All right, and then I believe this is the final question for this one. Yes. For this session, J.H. Brooks asks, what gear would you consider essential for an entry-level location sound kit, primarily for corporate interviews, corporate promotional pieces, and independent short films? A microphone, a boom pole, and a sound recorder. That's what's absolutely essential. Now, as far as the first microphone I would buy, in most cases, I would probably, in what you've talked about here, corporate interviews, corporate promotional pieces, I would probably go with some sort of, a lot of people would go with a shotgun microphone first. I think that can be fine. The problem is, of course, if you get indoors in very reverberant spaces and the person that you're recording gets a little off axis, you start to get that strange warbling sound. Phase and comb filtering. So that's something you probably want to avoid, but I guess it's a toss-up between the two. If you can only buy one mic, I guess I'd probably go with a shotgun microphone. That's going to work well outdoors, and you'll just have to be careful in reverberant spaces indoors. So a lot of people may disagree with me, but I actually think sound blankets should be very high up on the list. If you're going to be recording in spaces where you can't always control the acoustics otherwise, having sound blankets and some way to suspend them just temporarily, around the set is really helpful. Century stands or C-stands are great for that. You can easily suspend a blanket up without tacking anything to the wall with a C-stand. And I will put links. Let's see. I did a piece on sound blankets, so I'll actually link to that video so you can see all of that there. After you have wired boom mics, I think wireless comes after that. And actually, I would actually go wired shotgun mic, wired supercardioid for indoors, ideally. Obviously, the mixer is going to need to be one of the first things you buy, the sound recorder mixer, cables and headphones and all that business. But then after all that, I wouldn't add wireless until after that. It's going to be hard because if you're doing all this solo, you're going to have to get someone to help with booming the mic or something. You could go with wireless. Some people may choose wireless before that. I don't love this. I still don't love the sound of wireless, or lavaliers, I should say. Wireless is fine, actually, if you have a good wireless kit, but it's the lavaliers that, to me, are never the ideal solution. I use them when I have to, which is almost always. I will almost always, again, lav up the talent and boom a mic, and then choose the best one and get rid of the other one. And there have been some circumstances where the lav mic ended up sounding better, just because we're working in noisy environments or whatever the case may be. So I guess it's a toss-up. It's your choice. If you know where you're going to be working, which I assume you do, I would probably go with a boom mic first. So hopefully that helps. And we will call this week's session here. Again, I'm going to go ahead and do the second session and get that up early in the week next week so that you have that as well, so that nobody's waiting too long for the questions. Again, thanks for all the questions. Get out there and make some great sound.